Ko o te awa, ko te awa, ko o. I am the river is me. It's a Māori proverb, whakataukī, and it points to something spiritual, sacred, a deep connection between us and nature, between us and water. This connection shapes our identity. Ko o te awa, ko te awa, ko o is also the name of a documentary where a kaumatua from the whanganui iwi, Ned Tapa, invites a First Nations elder from Australia and his daughter, who are activists in saving their own dying river back home, on a 5-day canoe trip down this sacred river, the Whanganui. The trailer to the movie points to 3 linked themes. Firstly, that everything represents a small part of a larger weave. We are in the river nature, and the river nature is in us. We are a tiny thread in that much bigger tapestry. Secondly, if we look after the river nature, it will look after us. We can nourish each other, learn from each other. Lastly, nature, and particularly rivers, can cleanse us, heal us, not just our bodies, but our minds and souls, if we let them. First reading today from Mary Oliver is also about a river. Despite the pun, the River Clarion exists. It's in Pennsylvania. And she hears the river talking. In other poems, she says singing. We must, though, she cautions, be patient. Sit for a while, maybe a long while, to hear it. And there are many things that can drown out the voices of the river. She hears the voices of the river saying, I am a part of holiness, a part of, a window into, a mirror of God. So I'd ask you to consider this, that not only do we need to cherish and look after our rivers, to be guardians, kaitiaki, but also to open ourselves to the possibility that rivers are habitats of God, maybe more spiritually mature than us, and in whose presence and at whose feet we might want to sit, listen, and learn. Our land, Aotearoa, is blessed with rivers. Rivers bless us with their life, potency, spirit, and wisdom. There are some who bridled back in 2017 when the Whanganui River was given the legal status of a person under a unique Treaty of Waitangi settlement. It means the Whanganui River, the third longest in the country, has all the rights, duties and liabilities that come with personhood. As Chris Finlayson said at the time, though some will say it's pretty strange, it's no stranger than a family trusts or companies or incorporated societies. Maybe Chris, maybe not. Of course, a river does not have the moral capacity of a human being. Rivers, like oceans, can give life, but they can also take life away. Rivers don't choose to destroy or kill and are not morally culpable. Rivers need to be respected, as any tramper who's ever tried to ford one will know. Rivers need to also be cared for in terms of how much water we take from them and what we put in them. Giving a river the legal status of a person is a way to correct the unhelpful and harmful colonial concept of ownership, and instead replace it with a more biblical concept of stewardship, te reo kaitiaki. As the most powerful and dangerous animal on planet Earth, we humans need to take responsibility to guard for and care for rivers. For in doing so, we nourish not only the river and all the ecosystems and life dependent on it, we also nourish ourselves. We also, as I said earlier, need to humble ourselves in order to learn from the river, to listen for the river's spiritual wisdom, for its ways of healing, for its ability, like other tonga of nature, to nurture and nourish our souls. Our souls which, as Mary Oliver says, suffer from our self-preoccupation, the traffic, the busyness of our lives, and ambition, which drives our aberrant society and seeks to destroy it. Our souls which have in suffering become splintered. This is why I like the story from 2 Kings 5 of the soldier, Naaman, and the river. For war requires the soldier to dehumanize his adversary. War and killing can splinter the soul. Which is why if we as a country decide to send our young men and women to war, we need to care deeply for them when they return. Naaman had a splintered soul. And as psychotherapists know, trouble in the soul is often followed by manifestations in the body. In Naaman's case, it was a form of eczema. He itched. And I guess with arm in the heat, he itched more. It wasn't what medically we would call leprosy. The story is cleverly nuanced. Naaman was the successful commander of the army of Aram, modern-day central Syria. In the hierarchy of power, he was close to the top. But because of his suffering, he was willing to listen to the bottom. Young, female, a slave, and nameless is about as close to the bottom of the power pyramid as you can get. It is her voice, expressed to her mistress and then expressed to Naaman, that starts him on the journey to spiritual and physical health. The voice of wisdom, like it often does, came from below, not from above. Unfortunately, from Naaman's perspective, wisdom meant crossing into the land of your enemy and asking your enemy, and as he and his colleagues would have understood it, your enemy's God, for a favour. It wasn't just a case of going down to your local GP prophet down the road. Rather, it was a humbling experience of venturing into enemy territory. So Naaman went to his king and explained. And the king, being a king type, thought that dealing with prophets and spiritual healing was your usual power type transaction. So he writes to his fellow king, the king of Israel, who he expects will order his prophet to order his God to heal Naaman. And he attaches a king-sized payment that reflects his status and the regard that he holds Naaman in. The king of Aram was being kind, but he was blind to the healing wisdom that comes from below. Then comes the humorous part in the story. The letter and gift are delivered to the king of Israel, who, in polite language, freaks out. For this king knows that such healing is not a king-type, power-type transaction. He knows that the Hebrew prophets often have tempestuous relationships with their kings. They are not puppets, especially that Elisha and his former master Elijah. Similarly, the God of Israel does not do the king's bidding just because the king asks. Hello? Yahweh, like prophets, is unpredictable, and gold and silver and fine garments won't seal the deal. The king of Israel indeed thinks the king of Aram is trying to set him up. In other words, pick a fight the king of Israel does not want and thinks he will lose. Into this freaking out comes Elisha. Palace gossip has gossiped its way to his ear. Don't freak, says Elisha. Let him come. So the message gets back to Naaman, who now, following the advice of an enemy slave girl, enters enemy territory to ask a favor of an enemy prophet who serves an enemy god. Being strong and brave, Naaman made sure he didn't go alone. He was scared. I guess not from a physical attack. For that he had plenty of training, but scared because of what this might cost his pride, for which he'd had no training. And his pride quickly took a knock. Elisha didn't even come to the door, but merely conveyed through a servant the order to wash 7 times in the Jordan River. So Elisha did not greet him and acknowledge Naaman's status and power. Elisha did not say a lengthy prayer or anoint him with special healing ointments. Elisha did not even want Naaman to say a prayer to Yahweh. No, Elisha simply wanted him to wash in plain old H2O in the Jordan. This was too much for Naaman. There was plenty of good water and good rivers in Syria. This prophet was treating him with disdain, which I suspect Naaman had secretly feared would happen. He should never have listened to that slave girl. Then we learn something else about Naaman. As a leader, he'd chosen not sycophants, but those willing to offer a contrary view to surround him. And even when in a rage, Naaman listened to them. Maybe that's why he'd been such a successful commander. So once again, Naaman humbled himself and he went to the river, and he found himself soothed and healed in the waters of his enemy. Ko'o ta'awa, ko'o, ko ta'awa, ko'o. I am in the river is in me. There's an interesting postscript to the story about Naaman trying to pay Elisha for the healing. Naaman was operating like his king in the economic system of financial payment for services rendered. The river, Elisha, and Yahweh, God being in all and through all, worked in the economy of grace. They knew that a man with a splintered soul had, by listening to and going to the land of the kin of those he had killed, and trusting in the life power of the river, had humbled himself and miraculously found healing. This was a surprising gift, a grace. I say miraculously and surprising because there are no guarantees when it comes to healing. If you made Naaman's story and what he allegedly did into a medicinal tablet, there's still no guarantee it would work. You can have all in the faith in the universe. You can have the best doctors. You can have the loveliest, most caring and generous person. You can be that most lovely and caring, generous person. But you still might not find healing. Indeed, you might suffer. There are no guarantees. A closing thought on rivers. Often there is a river in our lives, a literal river. One you might have swum in, played in, or fished in. One that you associate with a concept of belonging to a place. This is why a basic PPH, introductory speech, often asks us to name our awa, or river. In Christian thought, the Spirit of God has often been described as a river of life, flowing in and through our lives. As a metaphor, it reminds us that God is moving, changing, dynamic. And when we're in the river, the dynamism can carry us along. But Christian thought has really articulated a relationship of mutuality between ourselves and the river, where we are mutually dependent on the health and well-being of one another, and where those of us with the means and ability to guard or care for our rivers do so. Nor has Christian thought entertained the idea that the river might be our spiritual teacher, our guardian and guide. Have a great week.